So I'll give you guys a little bit of a background about me first. As Marion said, I'm Graham Ossie. I'm originally from Greensboro, North Carolina. Is anyone here from Greensboro? Or High Point? Yeah? What high school did you go to before here? Northern, okay. I went to Grimsley. And I went to Emory University in Atlanta where I was a chemistry major. Graduated in May 2011. And I did undergrad research in the Department of Dermatology. And it was sort of just the fact that I stumbled upon a project in that lab on nano delivery of some of the drugs my professor was making that I got into nanotech. Nanotechnology is awesome. As you'll see in this presentation, it can really change the world. And so hopefully you guys will get something out of this. And the conference is April 4th through 5th. You guys are invited April 5th from 2 to 4. We have some of the leading experts across the country there. It's a great way to learn more, a great way to meet people, and maybe you can find potential internship opportunities there. And we really want to expose more young people to nanotechnology. So nanobiotechnology. So you guys might know some of the more basic things in here. We'll move through those pretty quickly. But what is nanotechnology? Oh, that wasn't supposed to happen. So 1 meter is approximately the width of a door frame, right? This door is 1 meter, right? 1 centimeter is approximately half a penny. A nanometer, wait, that's really cool. That's coming in a second. I clicked too fast. A nanometer is half a strand of DNA in length. So it's really small. It's 1/billionth of a meter. Now nanotechnology is defined many different ways according to many different people. The general definition is between 1 and 100 nanometers, although we work with people who are considered microtechnologists. But sort of really, when you get to a really small level, you get interesting and unique properties because you change the volume to surface area ratio. At that point, surface area is becoming larger than volume because you're so small. So all sorts of properties change with chemicals and molecules at that level. So this video is cool. It's sort of just on there because it's cool, but shows the interaction of certain chemicals with water, which occurs on a nano level.
Whether you've left school or you're still at school, you can appreciate the sheer fun and mayhem that chemistry can be. There's so much to it. Bunsen burners, mixing chemicals. Very nice. Now, you may have been allowed to mix very small amounts of lithium with water. You may, if with a responsible adult, have mixed H2O with sodium. And you may, under very strict scientific control, have witnessed potassium mixed with water. But the odds are, if you have, it will only ever have been on one of those rubbish science videos. There you go, mate, present. Oh, thank you very much. These next two are the dog's nuts of the periodic table. They are, if you like, the king and queen of alkali metals. Mix these babies with water, stand well back, and watch the mayhem. And that's just what we're going to do. Mr. Tickle, bring on the rubidium.
Here it is.
Is that it?
Well, it might not look like much, Richard, but it's a highly reactive metal. It's sealed in this glass tube under argon atmosphere conditions, just for safety.
Right, so what's going to happen when you drop that in the water?
Well, imagine, if you will, letting off a hand grenade in a bathtub.
Righto, I'm off. Have that.
OK.
Good luck. OK, Tickle. Drop the rubidium in the water.
Stand back, everybody. This one's going to be bad.
2 grams of rubidium will only react when our specially designed vial dissolves in the water, which gives John a few crucial seconds to get into our safety zone.
Yes!
Wow.
That is more like it. Only on Brainiac do you get that kind of science. But I believe we can go one better. There is one more alkali metal we can legally use.
Yes, Richard, cesium, the emperor of alkali metals, particularly nasty, could go off at any time.
And that's it?
Oh, yes.
Brilliant. I like it already. Now, what's that going to do
when it hits the water.
Imagine a depth charge in a bathtub.
Fair enough, mate. I'll leave you to it. Good luck.
Thank you.
OK, John, go for it.
Warning, 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 extreme danger, clear the area.
As our cesium sinks in the water, the rapid generation of hydrogen gas should produce quite an explosion.
So I just include that because it's something that gets a lot of people excited about what chemistry can possibly do. But pretty much what happens is all of those are in the first period on the periodic table, and they have an extra electron. So when you drop the pure metal or non-metal in some of the cases into the water, it rapidly gets rid of that and releases hydrogen gas. So that happens on an atomic level, which is a nanometer, a couple nanometers on a very small scale. And that's what we're talking about in nanotechnology, manipulating molecules and chemicals on that level. So what that is, nanobiotechnology is simply the application of nanotech to medicine, to biology, to anything in either of those fields. So here are a couple industries that can be affected by that. You have agriculture. We'll see a little later about pesticides, how nanotechnology affects pesticides. Medicine. My project in college was to take a drug that in a petri dish really was effective against the genes for cancer, for melanoma. It suppressed the oncogenes. It upregulated the tumor suppressor genes. When injected into a tumor, it reduced the tumor size by 97%. 97%, which is huge. The problem is when you inject it systemically into the animal, it kills the animal because the process destroys tissues in the body. So my project was to encapsulate it so it didn't do that. And we removed the toxicity, but then ended up messing with the medicine, so they're still working 5 years later on how to fix that. Materials. Have any of you heard of the Boeing 787, the new Dreamliner? It's this new amazing airplane, almost as big as the 777 and the 747, but uses 30% less fuel. It's because the nanotechnology uses nanocomposites as the material in that plane. It's much lighter. It can go farther. It can use less fuel. Electronics, any computer you are using is nano. That's how processors get faster. They make smaller and smaller cells within the processor that go faster. And gaming, I saw a presentation at one of the last conferences we went to about how using nano and quantum computing, someone is changing the way video games are played and actually making them relevant for doctors in hospitals so they can train on video games in real life scenarios with real feel and real situations. And those are just a few of them. Does anyone know what this material is? Right, so it's carbon. So buckyball is a C60, right? You look at a soccer ball and you put a carbon on every corner, that's a buckyball, very much smaller. Right, this is called graphene. Graphene is a single layer of carbon. And it won a Nobel Prize last year, I believe. Some guy figured out what graphene was by messing around in his lab with a piece of Scotch tape and the end of a pencil and pulled off a single or almost a single layer of carbon. And this material is more flexible than most materials. It is stronger than steel and more conductive than the best metals we have. So it is a game changer. It can really affect lots of industries. It can if we made wires out of graphene, the amount of energy we would lose due to just heat going off of our electrical lines would be almost zero. So graphene's a huge thing. And as I said, I won the Nobel Prize.
I am Dr.
This. So this, have you guys heard of the Wake Forest Institute for Regenerative Medicine? Yeah, it's pretty famous now. I was lucky enough in high school because I knew a few people that I got to do an internship with them over the summer. And they are one of the biggest and greatest labs in this country because they're essentially growing organs in the lab. And by essentially, I mean they actually are growing organs in the lab. And they use nanotech too. It would be impossible to do what they're doing without the scaffolds and the materials that they use to either print, as you'll see, or build these organs around. And without those scaffolds using nanotechnology, they couldn't do it. So please just watch this video, learn a little more about Dr. Atala and his work.
Anthony Atala, Director of the Wake Forest Institute for Regenerative Medicine. We're working on many different tissues, including the skin, which we plan to bioprint, as well as ears, digits, muscle, cartilage, bone, nerve, to be able to replace things such as face structures, limbs and digits, as well as other parts of the body due to the damage incurred by injury.
What you just saw there with the ear, that's a nano scaffold, using nanotech material to make that scaffold for an ear.
There are many technologies that we use to actually engineer the tissues using the cells. And one of them, for example, is using a printing machine to actually print the cells, just like you would print a piece of paper. But instead of using ink, you're actually using cells. Another technique that we use is to grow patient cells and place them on 3D biodegradable molds to create entire complex organs like this bladder. After 8 weeks of incubation and growth, the new organ can be transplanted. There is no risk of...
And they've actually taken those bladders and done clinical trials with them, and they've worked. People who were born with bladder disorders and needed catheters were able to remove the catheter and live a normal life.
Rejection, because the cells grew from the patient's own cells. Every part of the body has cells capable of regeneration. Your heart cell can make more heart cells, and so on. We've engineered blood vessels, and you can actually see them pulsing. We've made over 22 types of tissues so far, including muscles that can expand and contract. In theory, anything that is inside the body can be grown outside the body. The dream of regenerative medicine is to have fully functional, off-the-shelf organs and tissues to replace diseased or damaged organs in the body. We really hope that these technologies will be able to not only help improve lives in terms of quality, but eventually also save lives.
So I worked with Dr. Shai Soker over at the Wake Forest Institute for Regenerative Medicine, and he's the head of that, of both the limb and the blood vessel groups there. So this is the premier nanotechnology company in North Carolina. One thing I need to say about nanotechnology is biotechnology is an industry that we describe as vertical, right? If you're biotech, you fit into one sort of column. Agriculture is one sort of vertical thing, industry. Computers are one vertical industry. Nanotech is what we call horizontal. There isn't really a nanotechnology industry. After a certain point when a company is sold, they're no longer a nanotechnology company. They're a company that uses nanotech to make something else. So that Liquidia is currently a nanotech company, and they actually might be one of the few that survive as a nanotech company because of what they're doing. But that's the amazing thing about nanotechnologies. It simply enables other technologies. So Liquidia, we don't have to go through too much of this, but they make nanoparticles that are customizable, essentially. They can change the size, shape, surface functionality, chemical composition, and flexibility of this. So they're using this for medical purposes, meaning you can design nanoparticles for X disease and Y drug and encapsulate the drug efficiently and properly and have it attack a specific tissue or a specific disease. So if you have a cancer that's spread across the body that's metastasized, in theory, their nanoparticle would only attach a chemotherapy drug to tissues that have the cancer because you can line it up to antibodies in the cancer. They have 54 employees is actually the correct number. We actually are having a panel at this conference. Unfortunately, you won't be able to attend, called How to Create 54 More Liquidias. It's sort of a business panel on how they were successful and how other companies can learn from them. So a case study with pesticides. Why do we use pesticides? That's a pretty clear question. We try and kill bugs and pests off our plants. And people are concerned with the use of pesticides. Can we name a few reasons why people are concerned with the use of pesticides? You're putting poison on your food. DDT scare. Right, that's runoff and other things. You know, not only are we poisoning our food, but we're poisoning all the other things in the environment, trees, animals. So those are a couple of reasons, right? How can nanotech help? Well, eliminating pesticides is a hard step at this point, right? We can grow so much organic food, but then that drives up the cost. How can we both produce enough good, healthy food and not have the negative aspects of pesticides? If you encapsulate pesticides on a nanoscale, you can use up to 90% less pesticides and get the same result. So you're putting, at the very least, less poison in your body. There is less poison we're putting in the environment. That's not ideal. Someday there'll be an ideal solution, but sort of in the interim, that might be the best way we can solve our issues. Now, number 2 is salt, another case study, right? That's the crystal structure of salt, just alternating sodium and chloride atoms. A potato chip, right? It's high in sodium. It's bad because it raises blood pressure. There are a lot of different health, and that leads to a ton of different health concerns. How does Nanotech solve this? PepsiCo, which owns Frito-Lay, made a salt crystal with a different shape. So instead of having a really tall, if you imagine one salt crystal on your potato chip that's really tall, you're tasting about 20% of the salt that's in that single salt molecule. But you're ingesting 100% of it. So there's 80% that doesn't benefit you by taste, but only harms you through sodium and high blood pressure effects. They reduced, there's still more work to do, but reduced the amount of salt by 25% by changing the crystal structure of some of their salt atom molecules so that there's less salt on the chip, but you taste exactly the same amount of salt. That's not on the market yet, but that's something they're planning on doing. So altering crystal structures is clearly the most important part of nanotech, right? This is diamond versus graphite, right? It is the same. They are both carbon. Why is diamond the strong, beautiful material and graphite something that we use every single day? Because the crystal structure is different. Yeah? So no, but I'll explain that to you in a second. Well, potentially, yes. But so graphite are these layers of graphene, essentially, right, on top of each other interacting. You can turn graphite into diamond if you apply a ridiculous amount of heat and a ridiculous amount of pressure. It would be very hard to go in and just yank atoms around to do it. But as you can see, just if you can manipulate crystal structures, which is possible, although not necessarily to turn graphite into diamond, you can do great things, right? I was doing another presentation for a friend of mine who's a New Orleans Saints fan, and I wanted to give him a shout out to the Saints for winning although now they're in a ton of trouble. Nanotechnology is something that you can, like it says, horizontal. It's also horizontal in the job field, right? You can go into nanotechnology business. I have no business background educationally. I'm sort of working in the business of nanotechnology now. COIN is a nonprofit that acts as a facilitator between the academic world and the business world. A lot of the times professors have great ideas, but can't get those ideas into a product. And a lot of times business people have the skills necessary to make a product a billion-dollar product, but don't have the ideas. So you have to make those people meet and give those people the resources. So you can be an executive of a company that has nanotech. You can be a lawyer. Patent law is a huge thing right now. The law is changing. People don't know how to protect their IP. Patent law is huge, and the lawyers are winning big. Medicine. You're going to be using nano if you become a doctor in the future. There's no question. And as a doctor, you have to understand what you're using. Science, engineering, teaching are all more obvious than those three. So if you want, after high school, where do you want to go in the state of North Carolina to learn about nanotech? There are a few things. One, the Joint School of Nanoscience and Nanoengineering does not currently have any undergrad programs, but is a great option for master's and PhD programs later in life. They are one of 2, 3, 4 maybe schools focused on nano. It's in Greensboro. The state put hundreds of millions of dollars behind this place to turn it into the preeminent nano school. And they took 2 universities, which is hard to do, right? The only few times, and 2 times that we can really think of in the state of North Carolina where major projects were accomplished by couple universities, and maybe there are a few more that I don't know about, but are RTP, right? NC State, UNC, and Duke came together in the 1950s and said, we want to build a research triangle park between us, and this location near the airport is right in between all three of our schools. Let's do it. And this. A&T and UNCG are a couple miles down the road from each other in Greensboro, and they came together to make sure this happened. North Carolina State has a Nanotech initiative. They don't have degrees in nanotech, but they incorporate nanotech into a wide variety of their engineering and science disciplines. Forsyth Tech has an associate's program in nanoscience. That's a big thing for us at COIN. We want to develop a workforce for nanotech, so nanotech companies have someone to hire, and so that's big for us. And then Duke, East Carolina, UNC Charlotte, UNC Chapel Hill, and Wake Forest all have a lot of research programs. ECU is especially strong in nanotoxicology. Duke has something called SAINT. It's the Center of Environmental Implications for Nanotechnologies. So they're sort of looking at when we make nanotechnologies, where do they go, how do they affect our lives? UNC Chapel Hill, I know a few of you are working with someone over at UNC Chapel Hill making nanotubes. They have the guy who founded Liquidia, Joe DeSimone, on their chemistry faculty, and a guy named Bill Zamboni. They are both big deals in the nano world. So these are all great options after high school. Nope, I have one more slide. It's going to hit the wrong button. Right, so just a quick summary of what's going on in North Carolina for you guys. 35 university research centers, including Wake Forest Research, Institute for Regenerative Medicine, PhD programs, associate degree programs. Industry, there are about 40 nanobio and between 50 and 70 nano companies in the state of North Carolina. Compare that with 500 bioscience companies and 400 medtech companies. It seems tiny, but we have a vote of confidence from the guy that made bioscience that big in the state of North Carolina. He sees nano on the same path that biotech was on, which is pretty cool for me in my career, and for the state of North Carolina. There are 4 medical schools and 5 major teaching hospitals, and there's a new medical school forming in Charlotte off of the UNC Medical School that will be all use nano right now. Entrepreneurial resources, I mean, this is a big thing for us. It's really hard to be an entrepreneur, to have an idea to start a business and be successful and not lose all your money over it. So we're creating a culture in North Carolina where you can actually make money and turn your idea into product and help everyone. And then just a lot of other funding and other opportunities for entrepreneurs. The North Carolina Biotechnology Center, how many of you guys have heard of that place? That's pretty good. I hadn't heard of that until I started looking for jobs in December of 2010. They are an awesome resource. Students can get a lot of their publications for free. They coordinate the biotech community in North Carolina, and they give us our funding. And then there are 4 centers of innovation doing the same thing we're doing in different industries. One in medical devices, one in drug discovery, and a very new one in marine biotechnology. They're all great resources. And why do I mention all these things? Is I know you guys are focused on college, focused on going places after you're here at North Carolina School of Science and Math. These are all places where if you are interested in doing any sort of internship, whether it's coming to COIN and being able to just simply help us write a newsletter every single week. We're starting a nano newsletter. You would learn a ton about nano that way. Or if you want to reach out to one of these universities closer home over the summer maybe and say, hey, I want to get involved in nano research, these are places you can look. So thanks so much. That's the extent of my formal presentation, but I'm very open to questions, especially about the conference if you guys have them. So are there any questions?